the mayor of the city of Philadelphia. But Dan Wolken doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about football. And, of course, he writes for USA Today, and he's got a big article today about the absolute debacle that is NCAA Division I, Division II. I don't know about Division III and the other smaller conferences. Dan, how are you, man? Appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on with us.
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Good. So now the column today, are a lot of people getting to you and saying, why are you trying to do this to us? We need college football. Has Jim Harbaugh called you and absolutely screamed into your ears today?
No, that's a little bit less, I think, of that now than there was maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago when people like me tried to sound the alarm and say that they had not, in the college space at least, done enough to figure out how to do this safely. Their reopening plans for college sports were all based on hope. It was never really based in logic or science. It was all just, let's just cross our fingers and we'll see how it goes. And it's happened now in the midst of this dramatic uptick in cases, especially in states in the SEC footprint like Florida and Texas and Georgia and South Carolina. And I just think now there's this realization that it's going to be extremely hard once these college campuses open back up, if they open back up, to be able to run a program without getting overwhelmed by coronavirus infections. And so it's really put this dour, I think, outlook on the season, and people are really starting to now come to terms with that.
Well, I know the Ivy League has shut down things for the fall, as did the Patriot League. Who's on deck? I was seeing something where the ACC canceled their virtual media day, and they're going to be making a decision very soon. Do you think they're the next one?
Well, I think that the leagues like the Ivy League, the Patriot League, where football really doesn't make money, I think it's easier on July 14th for those leagues to just say, hey, listen, we don't want to deal with everything that's going to come along with trying to run a football program right now, so we'll just hunt until the spring and see what happens. The financial incentives for the big conferences are much different, and so they're not going to be ready yet to make that decision. Now, you saw the Big Ten and Pac-12. They were only going to play conference games. Mainly that's just for flexibility and control, so that if there's an interruption in the season, if there's some games that get canceled, it's easier to just sort of rearrange the schedules from the conference office. And I do think ultimately all the leagues will come to that same conclusion as a next step. But, in terms of canceling the season or moving it to spring or any big drastic measures, I think it would be at least a few more weeks before anybody got to that point.
Dan Wolken of USA Today. Now, Dan, I've read the column, and, a lot of people will agree with you, and I look at science, and I don't go out into the stores without masks. I don't try to shame people who do. I listen to scientists. But the science to me right now is so all over the place. I just ripped the mayor who's now saying that we have to be shut down in Philly until February 21st of last year. I don't know even the biggest quack couldn't possibly, till 2021, February 21st, that's when everybody's safe to go out again. And I don't listen to politicians, but there's a story in Florida today on a TV station. Fox 35 went through the COVID-19 test reports and found that many clinics reporting 100% positivity, and even Orlando Health admits their numbers are wrong, saying it shows 98% positive, but it's actually 9.4%. So who are we to listen to? The people who don't want anybody playing sports, the people who don't like the SEC, the people who don't like this or that, or actual real statistics?
Well, look, I think if you want to sort of cherry pick one issue with one set of data in Florida is evidence that this thing is not a big deal or that we don't have sort of this raging epidemic going on. I mean, I just don't think that reflects the reality of the situation. All of these decisions are being driven by the fact that you can't run a college football program when you have a raging pandemic, and as a campus community, this thing is just going to circulate and spread all over the place because it's going to overwhelm the capabilities of the school. It's also just, frankly, not going to allow football to be played if you've got guys who are, positive, and then they got to go into quarantine for a week or two, and then they've got to contact trace, and you're playing a contact sport, right? So you get on the practice field, and you come into close contact with a lot of people. So, if you're not testing constantly, then the likelihood that you're going to have a major outbreak within a football program is probably pretty high. And yet we're also seeing in this country problems with testing. I have a relative who got tested 2 Thursdays ago, and as of right now still doesn't have the result. And that's a major, major issue, and it's something that a lot of schools are having to deal with right now. If you don't have a medical center on campus that can turn those around for you, then you've got these football players who get tested, and they may have to wait days before they know whether they're positive. So that's not going to work either. I mean, the point of this is, if you just step back from a 30,000-foot level and stop worrying about, the nitpicks of all the data, is that we have not invested as a country the effort, the resources, and the commitment to put our foot down on this virus, to get it to low levels of infection around the country, that we can do things like team sports. And if this country is still in a place in a month where we have this out-of-control epidemic, and I think it is, there's no question right now it's an out-of-control epidemic, then football is going to be a victim of that, because there is just not a way to do it without creating some type of bubble, and that's just not going to happen in college.
Dan Wolken from USA Today. With all due respect, Dan, I'm not cherry-picking numbers. I'm giving you statistics that are being, and I'm not anti-science. I'm not saying they should go out and play and nobody should wear masks. I mean, we see sports happening everywhere else, and so I don't understand that you're saying that I'm cherry-picking stats from Florida, where everybody's gone crazy about the Disney World Open, and people are thinking that they're murdering people, yet the NBA guys are out there running around in Orlando, fishing and living life. Are we not supposed to do anything? Look around the world. They're playing soccer. They're playing sports all over the world, and teams want to get ready. I'm not saying do something irresponsible, but I'm not cherry-picking stats. I'm giving stats that are coming from actual science, not from like our mayor here in Philadelphia, who's telling us February 21st is now the arbitrary date when the virus will be gone. I mean, that's idiocy.
The NBA is spending $150 million to build a bubble for 22 teams where, a guy crosses the street to go get pick up food from DoorDash and goes 10 feet over the line. He's got to go into quarantine for 10 days. They're wearing, some sort of technological bracelet around their wrist to monitor their sleep, so that if they change their breathing pattern, they have to go into a medical examination. I mean, these are extreme measures that the NBA is taking, to try to manage this for the next few months, and it still may or may not work. We don't really know. You've had teams in the MLS in the bubble they've tried to create who've had to drop out. In Germany and England, I mean, they're creating these bubbles to try to separate and isolate players to a pretty significant extent, so that they can play these games. The college environment, the college sports circumstances are totally different, and it's not going to be a situation where you can put guys inside a bubble for any length of time. Not just because they're not getting paid, which is a whole other sort of ethical issue in all of this, but because it's just not practical. And so, these college kids are going to do what college kids do, and it doesn't really lend itself to keeping this virus out of circulation. So I just don't think it's really comparable when you're talking about NBA or what's going on in the Bundesliga over in Germany to what's going to happen at Clemson.
So what's the ripple effect then, Dan? I mean, do you have to have move football to the spring semester? Because we all know that football drives the train for all these other programs, basically except for, quite a few, Division I college basketball programs. But you know what I'm saying? It keeps a lot of things alive.
What I think is going to happen is that at some point they're going to say, okay, we're going to have to delay the start of the college football season to October with the hope that the levels of infection in the country have been suppressed, or at least in a lot of areas of the country have been suppressed to a much greater extent than they are right now, and that would give them a better shot to play as many games as possible without significant interruption. Now if that doesn't work, if you get into late September and it still doesn't look like October is doable, then they might have to look at the spring. But that creates its own set of issues and complications that they don't really want. And obviously that's not ideal for a whole lot of reasons. But, if it's the only way they can get a season in, it's the only way they can get a season in. There's also some other, potential plans out there. Maybe you play a few games in the fall and a few in the spring, depending on just sort of the numbers, and I don't know if that's really viable or if that's something that they would want to do, but it's certainly something that they've modeled, and they're going to have to be flexible. I mean, that's the name of the game right now for I think every sport, but particularly football, is flexibility. And colleges, have got some, but in a couple weeks they're going to need to start making some decisions.
Well, speaking of that, the NFL's meeting with their players and the association today, and one of the things they're talking about, because these guys can't wear masks under helmets, but these visors that are made by Oakley. Now, we've seen a lot of players wear visors underneath the helmet. Hockey players wear visors. And so, obviously, the spittle and all the other things that you worry about, from the mucus and things flying out of your mouth, that would help that immensely. College football spends a lot of money. Let's be honest. College football makes a lot of money, so they spend a lot of money so that the other programs can stay afloat in colleges. Why wouldn't the NCAA do something like that, especially with these big-time programs who make gazillions of dollars?
Yeah, any sort of technological innovation or advancement, I think, is definitely going to be looked at and purchased ultimately if that's what it takes to play the season, to add a layer of safety to what these schools are trying to do. Now, part of the problem with all of college football is the NCAA just does not have any control over what happens in college football. It's all balkanized by conference, and it's one of the things that they're having trouble with right now is this issue of testing. How much to test from conference to conference, from school to school. Up to this point, it's kind of all been everybody figure out what's best for them. And so same thing with something like a shield, a face shield. The NCAA can't really mandate it. So you'd have to have it at the conference level. Well, then, you'd have to get other conferences bought in, or else, there's no point in doing it in the first place. So all these decisions in college sports get really complicated by the fact that there's no central leader, there's no governing body. But, I think certainly something as simple as a face shield, if it worked, if it was, if players could use it without having it fog up and they couldn't see, or, something like that, I think that would be something that would be easy for people to embrace if it's effective.
Dan Wolken, USA Today, and it's amazing. Every day, Harry and I have been doing the show for the last 3 months. Every day we're like, are we going to have sports? Today I feel good about it. And then the next day it's like, no, I don't think good. And now we're getting closer to actual sports starting, and we're in that same situation every single day. We have no idea. But everything's getting, the hockey players are in training camp, the NBA guys are in Orlando, and so we'll find out. I don't know if it's day to day, as we always say about in sports, we're going to take it day to day, but it seems like it's day to day. Or is there a drop-dead date that you say that they have to decide to shut down the college football season for every conference?
Yeah, look, as you mentioned, we just don't know. Everything changes all the time, but some sports are easier than others to pull off, and college football just happens to be one that's particularly difficult to pull off under these conditions. And I don't know that there's a drop-dead date. Look, I think if starting the season at the last weekend of August, first weekend of September, I think by August 1st you kind of have to have an idea of whether that's possible so the teams can start really training and preparing for the season. But if at that point they decide to move it to October, that buys some time. And then you'll just have to see how things progress over the 3 weeks following that, whether that's feasible. So it's just a rolling target, I think, and we're just going to have to live with that amount of uncertainty.
Dan Wolken, columnist, USA Today. I know a lot of people probably not agreeing with you and calling you names and stuff. That happens to all of us. We say something, you write something, and then people go crazy either way. That's the glory of social media and being on radio, TV, a blog, or writing a newspaper column, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
It is part and parcel of the job, and if you can't handle it, then you probably do something else.
That's
exactly right. I'm thinking of welding myself. You know, I'm thinking of a trade. Although I can do a lot of things, I could probably teach a trade. You know, cement work, stuccoing,
you
electricity.
could build a house.
I could build a house. I may do that right after the segment.
Yeah.
Dan, appreciate you coming on.
Thanks,
man.
Dan.
Thanks for your time.
See you guys.
There he is, Dan Wolken of USA Today.
Tony could build a house as long as he doesn't have to do any of the measurements.
Oh,
I have other
okay.
people for that.
Well, yeah, math. That's
yeah,
math.
the math. Yeah.
Everything's
math,
laser
geometry.
now. Everything's laser. You just set up a laser, you get the directions. You don't have to go out there with a tape measure anymore.
No?
No. Even when they do your countertops. We built our kitchen, but we didn't do our own countertops. And the people that come in to do your countertops now, they're not putting a tape measure. They put a laser thing up, and it even tells you like the imperfections in the wall if you have any. And so when that countertop is made,
Well, I would say if